Hello everybody! A lot of writers come to me with their writing woes, and of all the complaints I hear about, the one that comes up the most is dialogue. You people hate writing dialogue. It never comes across naturally, it rambles on, you don't know what your characters would say. As for me, I really like writing dialogue. I love building characters, analyzing their personalities, creating connections, and obviously dialogue is a great way to do all these things. So I'm going to give you some tips for creating natural dialogue that's enjoyable to read. All of this stuff I'm about to say is stuff that I do in my own personal writing process, and I'm pretty damn good at dialogue. Tootin' my own horn. Toot toot. The first step is to get to know your characters. This is the work that needs to be done before you start writing the dialogue. You need to know your characters fully before you start writing for them. Basically, if your characters don't feel like real people, you're gonna have a really hard time writing their dialogue. It sounds like some foofy bullshit, but hear me out. Think of the people you know really well in real life. A mom, a sibling, a significant other. If I asked you, how would they respond to a difficult situation? Or what would they say if they were really excited? You'd be able to answer that, right? Not only that, you'd probably be able to give a really specific answer almost immediately. If you know your characters just as well as you know your family or friends, then their dialogue should come to you just as quickly. The second step is to give your dialogue purpose. Typically, dialogue serves one of two purposes. Either you're trying to build a character or you're trying to move the plot along. But usually, dialogue should be a little bit of both. You want your dialogue to show the readers what your characters are about. Are they happy, cynical, rebellious, or rooting? And obviously, your characters should be discussing shit that's relevant to the plot or subplots. If neither of these elements are addressed, then your dialogue's useless. Which brings me to my third point. Avoid meaningless conversation. Here's what I'm talking about. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. You? I'm good. How was work? Same old, same old. Now this whole conversation's pretty standard. We've all had exchanges like this, probably on a daily basis, so it's normal for writers to want to include it. But here's the thing, it's boring. No one cares about any of that shit. If you imagine your characters having an exchange like this, just add a bit of narrative explaining that the exchange went down. Even Jason exchanged pleasantries before sitting down for dinner. Boom. Done. Then you can dive into the dialogue that readers really care about. Now there is an exception to this rule, as always. Meaningless conversation is okay if it's not actually meaningless. You can include dialogue that doesn't serve a purpose if the way it's spoken or the tone of voice does. Let's go back and use the same exchange that I did earlier, except change the manner in which it's spoken. Hi, how are you? Fine. You? I'm good. How was work? Same old, same old. In this situation, the words themselves offer pretty much no value, but the way in which they're spoken could be super important to the story. Someone's pissed the fuck off, and kind of passive-aggressive. So long as you communicate the feeling of the moment, basic dialogue won't read as meaningless. The next rule to follow is to give each character a distinct voice. I don't know if you've noticed, but not all us human folk talk the same. You'd think that wasn't common knowledge based on some of the books I've read. The same robotic voice, all spoken with perfect grammar. Look, I'm a writer and I still say whatever, like, gonna, wanna, poop, dickhole. You need to make sure that all of your characters speak differently and in a way that's reflective of who they are and what they've been through. I'm not saying each character needs to have a unique accent or a catchphrase, but our personality and life experience plays a role in how we communicate with others. Think about whether or not your characters would be emotional, or cuss, or use slang, or be polite. All of this crap varies from person to person. On a related note, the next rule of writing dialogue is to keep it age, time, and setting appropriate. Sometimes writers think they're writing appropriately for a character, and they're not. I've seen middle-aged writers add hip dialogue for their teenage characters, and no. Maybe that would have been hip dialogue when they were teenagers, but certainly not today. And I've read books where the characters were supposed to be speaking in Old English, but the dialogue sounded more like Siri. Old English does not mean that you cannot use contractions and that you must type like a robot. Writers, if you don't know about something, research it. Because if you don't know what you're doing, the dialogue's gonna read as inauthentic and unbelievable, and that's a problem. The fifth rule for writing dialogue. Is it the fifth rule? The sixth rule? Whatever. The whateverth rule for writing dialogue. Make sure it flows. This is actually sort of counterintuitive because conversations in real life don't always flow. Real dialogue can be disjointed or go off on tangents, or someone can interrupt in the middle and be like, oh wait, before I forget, let me tell you about blah blah blah. These are things you should typically avoid. You want a majority of conversations to run smoothly because then it'll be much easier for the reader to understand what's going on. It might not be 100% true to real life, but it'll enhance the entertainment level of your novel. Now, there is a trick to writing smooth, seamless dialogue, and that's that you want to write all the dialogue first with zero narrative. Don't write any of the "he said," "she gasped," "he wrinkled his nose," "she grabbed his hand." Skip that crap. This will help you focus solely on the words being spoken, because sometimes adding the narrative can be distracting. If you have a lot of people talking, you can even color code the dialogue. That way you can track how many times each person is contributing to the conversation, so you don't inadvertently exclude anyone. But bottom line, write out the entire conversation, dialogue only. Once you're done, you can go through it, make sure it's nice and pretty, and then add in all that super awesome narrative. Which brings us to my next rule. Don't just write what your character said, show how they said it. It's extremely important to illustrate the emotion behind whatever conversation's going on. And whenever you're conveying emotion in writing, it's always best to show, not tell. What's the easiest way to do this? Body language. If your character is super crazy mad, maybe he's clenching his fists, or grinding his teeth, or a vein's bulging from his neck. If another character is super surprised or scared, maybe his eyes widened, his face drained of color, he flinched, or his mouth gaped open. These all communicate emotion in a visual way that a reader's gonna be more apt to connect to. Now, it's also important to know when to hold off on these nuances. If you're trying to write a really fast-paced scene, like quick witty banter or a heated shouting match, then these notes should only be added when necessary, like when an important action occurs or to clarify who's speaking. If a conversation is really firing off, then excessive narrative will slow it down. But other than these exceptions, painting a picture of what a character's doing or how they're speaking will really transform basic dialogue into an engaging conversation. And here is my last rule for writing dialogue. Outline the conversation ahead of time. I know you've already outlined the entire book, right? But if you're going to be writing an especially long conversation or you want to cover a lot of points, make yourself a little flowchart. That way you won't forget any points and be forced to awkwardly add them in somewhere at the end. Even if you don't know exactly what's going to be said, a flowchart should help guide you in the right direction. You should already know what you're trying to accomplish with your dialogue. Maybe you're trying to build a connection between two characters or share pivotal plot points with the reader. Outline these points in the order in which you want them to occur, and then follow your outline while you're writing. Boom! Shit just got easier. Anywho, those are my rules for writing dialogue. This is all stuff that I do whenever I write dialogue, and it's made the process super seamless. I encourage you to implement these steps into your own writing and let me know what you think. And on that note, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays, and sometimes I draw on my face. And if you have any questions, or if there's something you'd like me to talk about in my next video, leave me a comment or tweet me at Jenna Moreci. Bye! Oh fuck, I have to run errands. I didn't think this through. I am the most feminine man in the world, la 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 la. Hey!